A topic overlooked in dominant discourse and by mainstream society, as well as by many historians, cultural critics, and social commentators, both past and present, is the immeasurable contribution by people of Latina and Latino, and more specifically Mexican, descent to the history of agriculture in the United States and more broadly the American economy. One need only engage in an interrogation of images designed and employed by multi-million-dollar manufacturers and corporations such as Sunkist and Sunmade to realize that the illustrated beauty of an agrarian landscape and the aura of its environment belies mainstream society's disregard for the work of people of Mexican descent. One Sunkist logo presents a scene of row upon row of oranges, lightly touched by sunlight. The convenient placement of mountains, situated in such a manner as to provide adequate shading for the setting, completes the picturesque pastoral image. The omission of any illustration of worker labor suggests that society's idyllic image does not include farm workers. Similarly, Sunmade's logo presents an image of a young, fair-skinned girl holding an abundance of grapes in her basket, smiling as the sun radiates over her bonnet. A World of Its Own author Matt Garcia's application of the phrase, the orange curtain, is applicable to these logos and is helpful in expressing the deliberately controlled image of farm labor and how these constructed portraits are instrumental in veiling the work, effort, and history of people of Latina and Latino descent. An interrogation of the Bracero program, however, and its representation in the American media, combats the aforementioned historical negation and reveals the United States' deeply and historically rooted dependence on the labor of people from foreign nations, as well as people of Latino ancestry. The Bracero program, which begins in 1942 and lasts until 1964, is a result of a series of agreements between Mexico and the United States, which allow for and establish a system of Mexican contract labor. Over the 22-year span of its existence, the Bracero program employs between 4 to 5 million Mexican citizens, primarily in the fields of California. The program's implementation is in reaction to the labor shortages that arise during World War II. Its termination is planned to coincide with the end of the Second World War, when the American workforce is anticipated to return to its pre-war levels. However, U.S. agribusiness's reluctance to end its relationship with low-cost contract labor and its subsequent efforts to maintain the program are successful in continuing the contract system. Articles written in the Los Angeles Times during the 22-year span of the Bracero program provide much more detail than the broad narratives, and they foster an investigation that can unpack the controlling ideologies of the period. Similarly, these articles possess historical information that has been kept from mainstream consciousness, and consequently provide knowledge useful in constructing contemporary stories and histories of people of Mexican ancestry in the context of a guest worker program. In the titles themselves, the articles, Mexican Labor Vital Factor in Southland Agriculture, and Farmer See Peril if Bracero Program Ends, evidence the vital role that people of Mexican ancestry play in the development and maintenance of the agricultural industry in the United States. Additionally, the language and quotes that columnist Don Smith employs in Farmer See Peril furthers this assertion. Smith describes the potential end of the program as a crisis. He includes quotes from farm officials and citrus growers, which extol that the citrus industry is dependent upon the program, and makes strong assertions that without braceros, many of the crops would have rotted in the fields, and the area's economy would suffer a crippling setback if the Mexican National Program were to be discontinued. While Smith's affirmations of the importance of the Bracero program are intertwined with his assertions of America's dependency on the program, he nevertheless places significant value on the work of Mexican workers. Harry Bernstein's column AFL-CIO Asks Into Bracero Program expands the extent to which Los Angeles Times articles produced during and about the Bracero program are influential by promoting the stories and experiences of Mexican laborers that were and continue to be ignored. The article begins by situating AFL-CIO Secretary W.J. Bassett's grievance that the clauses of the contract labor program have been violated and that workers have been injured. While the mere reporting of an accusation may appear to be politically inconsequential in the context of the Bracero program, in which the complaints of braceros are frequently ignored or disregarded, it is much more significant than a blip on the political and societal radar screen. Bernstein's work functions as a mainstream account of the pitfalls of the Bracero program. It does not leave the burden of extolling grievances such as wage fixing and worker exploitation to activists and scholarly writers, but instead provides a popular and accessible platform for the observation of discontentment. Bernstein's AFL-CIO Asks Into Bracero program also sheds light on how the American agricultural industry, specifically the growers and manufacturers, work with the United States government to influence foreign and domestic markets. Bernstein reports the claim that the Bracero program has been used to undermine the efforts for achieving unionization and collective bargaining to improve the standard of living for American farm workers. He also articulates how the growers have worked with Congress to allow for the continuation of the program. Through linking the convergence of interest between growers and American government, and depicting the manipulation of the program for the benefit of private interest, Bernstein expands the discourse on the Bracero program to include the motivations outside the simplified narrative of a labor shortage. The creation of labor shortages to sustain the contract labor program implicates both the American government and the agricultural industry as convergent and complicit in constructing American policy for economic gain. The Los Angeles Times articles approach the issue of the Bracero program differently, with omissions in some parts and heightened focus in others. Nevertheless, each article and the conversation which they engage is paramount to filling in the gaps left by the historical negation of the stories of Mexican laborers in the Bracero program. Spotlighting the work of people of Mexican ancestry, acknowledging the lived experiences that resulted from contract labor, and naming the interrelated interests and efforts of the American business and government provide the template for contemplation about the deleterious effects of U.S. agribusiness. Looking back at historical sources, it is possible to elicit stories that have been forgotten over time. In so doing, old histories and experiences can be recognized and valued, and can contribute to contemporary issues being framed and addressed in the context of new meaning and deeper understanding.